My wedding was supposed to start in 1 hour. Instead of putting on my veil, I was staring at my phone screen. Right there on the screen was my fiancé, who I was meant to get married to, with his luggage at the international airport. The caption of the post read, "Leaving Naija for good. London, here I come." This is African Folktales with Nsinem. Sit back and listen to Mary's story. Mary was a very beautiful woman. That was a fact. Anytime she walked by, heads turned, both men and women. In fact, if you didn't turn to stare at Mary when she walked past, it was either your neck was paining you or you were blind. But with all her beauty and grace, Mary just couldn't find love. While her friends had their first crush, first heartbreaks, weddings, and babies, Mary was always on the bench, clapping for others like a loyal spectator. So when John asked her out, Mary almost jumped out of her skin. They met during her master's program at the University of Lagos. John was incredibly handsome, very charming, but financially unstable. To put it plainly, he was always out of job. He had big ideas that would blow if only someone would sponsor them. Mary worked at an investment bank and told herself, if this leads to marriage, what I earn can support both of us until he finds his feet. That innocent thought would later give her premium tears. After 3 years of dating, Mary started dropping hints about marriage. John told her he needed to be financially settled first. Wanting to help, Mary began investing money into his business ideas. One after the other, all of them failed. Then, one day, Mary got a life-changing opportunity, a fully funded scholarship for her doctorate program abroad. Excited, she ran to tell John. His reaction shocked her. John insisted she could not leave Nigeria without him. Mary suggested long-distance relationship, but he refused. He told her plainly, if you leave this country, this relationship is over. Mary stayed. Her best friend, Crystal, warned her that she was making a huge mistake. Mary exploded. She reminded Crystal that she was almost 39 and didn't have the luxury of starting over, while Crystal was already married with 3 children. Crystal later apologized and said she only meant well. When Mary told John she had rejected the scholarship because of him, he immediately proposed. He told her he would have loved to give her a big wedding but couldn't afford it. Mary decided she would handle everything. She transferred 6 million naira into John's account for wedding vendors and marriage rites. She didn't want anyone to know she paid for her own wedding. She loved him too much to bruise his ego. Then disaster struck. On the morning of the wedding, Mary was all dolled up and dressed up in her beautiful wedding gown when her best friend Crystal showed her the post John made at the international airport just before leaving the country. Mary had already put on her wedding dress and was about to put on her veil when Crystal showed her the picture. She cried so much that her friend had to give her a sedative. The following morning, her friend had to give her another bad news. John had not paid any of the vendors. Crystal had discovered this when she called to let them know the wedding was off. Her stomach dropped. Her hands shook. The realization hit Mary hard. He had taken the 6 million naira and vanished. Crystal told her that she had sent a text to all her wedding guests telling them the wedding was off. She had also switched off her phone because People had been calling when they saw the Facebook post. Mary was in a fix. Not only had John taken the 6 million naira, but he had not paid any of the wedding vendors. Mary couldn't believe how blind she had been. She now understood why he had insisted the marriage rite be done on the morning of the wedding before they took their vows at church. So technically, they were not married and she was left with debt. But that wasn't the biggest problem Mary was in. Mary was 2 months pregnant. She had decided to tell John after the wedding. It was meant to be a surprise. If only she had known that John was planning some surprises of his own, and more surprises were waiting for both of them. Keep listening. After the initial shock of being dumped at the altar wore off, Mary started paying off her debts. She visited the bank to see if John had cleared the 6 million naira from his account, and she was told they couldn't go into his record because it was against their policy. Mary asked to see the bank manager and she was ushered in to see him. He was a young man in his mid-50s with really kind eyes. Mary narrated the whole incident to him, and halfway in, her makeup was completely ruined because she cried out her eyes. The bank manager, Steve, gave her a box of tissue and listened to her. He didn't say a word. When she was calmer, he insisted they couldn't go through John's account, but he would be open to assisting her in future should she need his help. He then asked her if he could get her number. Mary gave it to him without much thought. She knew nothing could come out of it because she was already pregnant for another man. That evening, Steve called to check up on her, and the short call ended up being a long discussion that took hours. Steve was so easy to talk to, and he was very intelligent and well-traveled. Following evening, he called again, and this went on for a month. Then one day, he asked her out on a date. Cynthia's pregnancy wasn't showing yet, but she was definitely pregnant because her period had disappeared for 3 months, and 3 test results gotten from her hospital had affirmed it. So as Mary dressed up to go see Steve, she decided to tell him immediately she got there. She didn't want to postpone the heartbreak. But when she got there, she couldn't take her eyes off him. Steve was a good-looking man. The little streaks of grey hairs on his beard only made him sexier. Talking to Steve was easy. He flirted with her and thrilled her brain with engaging conversations that she almost forgot she wanted to tell him about the pregnancy. Then Mary blurted it out. I am pregnant for him. The shock on Steve's face was heartbreaking. Steve froze, eyes wide, a silence hanging between them. Mary felt her chest tighten and the room felt smaller. This was worse than any rejection she could imagine. She turned, barely able to look at him, and walked out. Mary, who had not come with her car, called a cab, and when she got home, she met Steve waiting for her there. He said just one word, let's go in and talk. Mary opened the door and they sat down. I know you're wondering why I'm keeping this pregnancy since he has left me, but this baby is my flesh and blood. I don't know if true love will ever find me, but I don't want to lose out on an opportunity of being a mother. This might be my only chance. I am going to be 40 in a few months, Mary said. When Steve didn't say a word, Mary continued. I should have asked you if you're married before going on a date with you, but it felt good to be wanted. I just wanted to live in that fantasy, even if it's not true. It's not a fantasy, Mary, Steve said, cutting her off. I was completely captivated by you the day you walked into my office. I couldn't say anything then because of what you were going through, but I can't keep it to myself any longer. I am completely and hopelessly in love with you, and I am not married. I lost my wife 5 years ago. She died trying to birth our twin sons. The babies didn't make it either. Mary wrapped her arms around him. I am so sorry you went through that, Mary said. That was the beginning of a relationship that transformed Mary's life. Steve was there for the entire 6 months of the pregnancy. He was there for doctor's appointments, every scan. He made sure all her midnight cravings were satisfied. And on the day of the delivery, he was right there in the delivery room. 3 months after, they welcomed Faith, their beautiful daughter. Mary and Steve had a private marriage ceremony, but a storm was waiting in the horizon, preparing to rock their little boat. Faith was a spitting image of John, but Steve didn't see any of that. He loved her like she was his blood. 2 years after, an opportunity came again for her to get a fully funded scholarship to get her doctorate in London. Steve got a study leave as well, and the family of 3 moved to UK. They settled in, but it was getting hectic for Mary, managing the home front and her studies. Steve then said they should outsource some chores to a help that comes during the day and leaves before evening. They both decided they get a cabman that could help Mary navigate London until she was used to the road system and could use a car. Your guess is correct. The cabman was John. A hungry-looking, unkempt, tired-looking John. Immediately he saw Mary, he started begging. He told Mary that he didn't mean to hurt her. He told her that as his only son of his mother, he wanted more out of life and didn't want to be a man being fed by a woman. And marrying her when he had nothing felt like a trap. He told her that he had to use the 6 million naira to find his way into UK. The shocking part was when he told Mary that he had met a woman online after they got close. She had promised to help him into UK. He would then marry her and be able to stay and work. It sounded like a good idea at the time, but when he got here, the lady changed. She became very aggressive and insolent. She would make him do all the chores and give her all the money he makes. John stated that things got worse after she put to bed because she divorced him and drained him of every penny he makes through child support. John looked at Mary and said that he never stopped loving her and he was very sorry for what he did out of desperation. If you were in Mary's shoes, what would you do? Would you walk away from him? Would you forgive someone like John? Would you mention to him that you had a child together? Do you think he already knows? What would you do if the father of your child appeared after 5 years? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. And while you're there, please subscribe to my channel and share interesting African folktales here on this channel. Back to the story. John's eyes in the rear view mirror was filled with a mix of shame and desperation. Mary, he whispered, his voice cracking. I know I don't deserve your breath, let alone your forgiveness, but seeing you here, it must be a sign. I've lived in hell since I left Lagos. I thought the 6 million naira was my ticket to greatness, but it was the price of my soul. Mary didn't respond. Her heart was hammering against her ribs. But it wasn't out of love. It was the adrenaline of seeing her attacker again. She looked at his ragged clothes and the way his hands shook on the steering wheel. This was the man she had almost destroyed her life for. Drive me home, Mary said. Her voice was cold and steady. I paid for a ride, nothing more. They arrived at Mary's house. Then John saw the luxury life Mary was living. He saw the life Mary had built without him. As Mary stepped down from the car, Steve came out carrying their 5-year-old child, Faith, on his shoulders. The little girl was laughing. The girl was laughing. Her hazel eyes identical to John's. John froze. He stared at Faith, then at Mary, then back at Faith. The math was simple. The realization hit him so hard, he couldn't believe it. Mary, is she mine? John asked. Inside the house, while Faith was tucked away with her tablet, Mary told Steve everything. She expected anger. She expected him to feel threatened. Instead, Steve took her hands. Mary, I knew this day would come. I didn't marry you for a clean slate. I married you because of your strength. That man outside has nothing. He gave up his right to be a father when he traded his family for a plane ticket. But Steve paused, his kind eyes turning serious. If you need to settle this for your own peace, I will stand right behind you." The next morning, John was still parked down the street. He was desperate. When Mary walked out, he ran to her, falling to his knees on the sidewalk. "Please, Mary, I've changed. I have nothing in this country. My ex-wife took everything. I want to be a part of my daughter's life. Let me be your driver for free. I just want to know my daughter." Mary looked at him. She thought about the 39-year-old woman who had cried herself to sleep because of him. She thought about the debt she had to pay of a loan. "John," she said softly, "you said you didn't want to be a man fed by a woman. Look at you now, begging for scraps from the woman you robbed. You didn't come back because you love me. You came back because I am your only way out of the hole you dug for yourself." She reached into her pocket, pulled out £100 and dropped at his feet. "This is for the 6 million naira and the doctorate I missed because of you. We are even. Do not ever come near my daughter. She already has a father and his name is Steve." John didn't take the £100 and disappear. Instead, the money fueled a different kind of hunger, the hunger for a shortcut back to a comfortable life. He realized that Faith wasn't just a child, she was his legal anchor to stay in the UK and potentially a way to tap into Mary and Steve's wealth. 2 weeks later, while Mary was in the middle of a seminar for her doctorate, she received a notification that chilled her blood. John had filed for a parental responsibility order and visitation right in a UK family court. John had found a no-win, no-fee solicitor claimed that Mary had abducted his child from Nigeria and was keeping him away from his daughter. He painted himself as a victim, a struggling father being bullied by a wealthy couple. Mary was devastated. "How can he do this?" she cried to Steve. "He stole from me. He abandoned me." Steve, ever the pillar, hired the best family lawyers in London. Steve told Mary that John has a right over Faith as her biological father, but he encouraged her that the court will always look out for Faith, for her stability and well-being. When they went to attend the mediation, for the first time in 5 years, they sat across a table. John wore a bureau suit, trying to look like a reformed man. "I just want to be a father," John pleaded, looking at the mediator. "I made mistakes, but I have the right to my blood." Mary leaned forward, her eyes like steel. "John, do you even know her middle name? Do you know what she's allergic to? Do you know that she wakes up screaming if the night light goes out? You don't want a daughter, you want a visa and a meal ticket." He opened his mouth to speak, but what he was saying didn't make sense. He sounded like a man who had been asked to explain the plot of a Nollywood movie in English backwards while blindfolded. During the mediation, John was asked to explain the 6 million naira theft in Nigeria. John's facade crumbled. He started shouting, accusing Mary of buying the bank manager and selling his child to another man. His aggression was recorded and it was a nail in his coffin. The final verdict, the UK court, was firm. While they acknowledged his biological link, they couldn't ignore his history of abandonment and the stability Faith had with Steve. The judge granted John indirect contact, meaning he could send letters which Mary would vet, but no physical visitation until he proved psychological and financial stability over several years. But John just couldn't wait. He wanted the big win now. As John left the courtroom, fuming and plotting his next move, he was met at the exit by 2 officers from the Home Office. Mary later heard that John was deported. She had filed cases of violence against him, unpaid child support, and fraud. Because he had no stable job and a history of fraud allegations in Nigeria, his application for leave to remain was denied. He was escorted to a detention center for deportation. John was finally gone. Months later, Mary stood on the balcony of her home, watching Steve and Faith play in the garden. Faith was calling Steve daddy, and Steve was looking at her with a love that no DNA test could quantify. And in her womb was their beautiful twin boys growing beautifully. Mary couldn't believe she could get pregnant in her 40s. She finally realized that her premium tears had watered the garden of her new life. And as for John, let's just say he's having plenty of time to reconsider his life choices, perhaps over a cup of deportation-approved tea. John was a lesson, Steve was a reward. Do you think John got what he deserved? by trying to use his daughter to stay in the UK. He ended up getting deported. Is that poetic justice? Steve has no blood relation to Faith, but he is her father. Do you agree with the judge's decision? Thank you for following Mary's journey on African Folktales with Nsinem. Sometimes heartbreak is protection. The man who breaks you may be clearing the way for the one who will rebuild you. If you enjoyed this story, then you enjoy this interesting African tale. Click on this story on your screen.